Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
Hey guys, Aaron Foster, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and our new friend Andy Glaze, who is a ultra marathoner and firefighter out in California. I ran across his TikTok, which is actually how I found him. He's got some very inspirational stuff on there. I have a lot of accolades I'm going to hammer on. I'm not going to put them all out front yet. I'm just going to touch on them throughout the conversation. So Andy, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you following my messages on TikTok and hopping on here with us. So,
of course.
When did you start the fire department, and what got you into the fitness realm?
So I've been in fire. I think I went to the fire academy like 14 years ago. So, and then shortly after going to the fire academy, I got hired at a county fire department out here in California. And then from there got hired with a city department. So I've been with my current department for about 10 years. Fitness, was a journey that started before fire, but then I did computer work beforehand, and it was really unfulfilling, and I worked out a lot, and a lot of my friends were firefighters, and they were like, hey, we get paid to work out. And I was like, ooh, tell me more. And so that was the initial catalyst to getting into fire, was the idea of being able to stay in shape and get paid to do that, rather than sit in front of a computer all day and, not really do anything worthwhile. So at least in my mind, not worthwhile. So, yeah, I mean,
so you want to have a more fulfilling life and stay in shape and get paid for it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I wanted to die knowing that I'd made a difference. And so I didn't really feel like I was making a difference, fixing computers and doing that sort of stuff. So
yeah, I get it. So 14 years in, and the fitness journey, were you always a runner? Were you into other things beforehand? Has it always been one or the other?
No, I mean, honestly, all through college and up until my early 20s, I was super unhealthy. I was overweight, smoked cigarettes, just was not a healthy person. And I sort of had this point in my life where I started getting a lot of anxiety because I was so inactive. And, when the body doesn't move, it gets anxious. Yeah. So I started working out because somebody had told me that might help me. I'm not really into taking pharmaceutical drugs to deal with my problems. So started working out, started getting a little better. And then I took a class on exercise science and learned a lot about the body, which I didn't really know. And in that class, I had to run 1.5 miles, and then it was the most terrible experience of my life. And so then I just never quit running after that. So I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of triathlons. I've done a lot of, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. I got really into obstacle course racing for a while. I've done 60 Tough Mudders. Just anything physically and endurance related, I get really into. But lately it's just been pretty much ultra running because I feel like it challenges me the most, more than just physically, but mentally too. And I like the combination of the mental and physical combination.
So I'm going to toot your horn for you since you didn't do it. This past year, he was ranked 19th in the world on Strava, which is an app that tracks your distance that you're doing. Now, he obviously is doing all of his running. Some guys cheat and do biking and running to add the miles onto it, make it easier, but his is all running miles. And I was actually watching one of his stories about that. So kudos to you. This is also week 150 of running over 100 miles or 100 miles, right?
Yeah, I've run over 100 miles for 150 weeks straight. So it's the last 3 years I've run 23,500 and something miles, probably more than that. So it's over 23,000 miles in the last 3 years.
That's
Yeah.
that's.
I think it's how many miles I put on my car.
It averages to over like 20 miles a day for 3 years.
I knew that gas in California was expensive, but dang,
Yeah. I save a lot of money on gas.
In 2022, you ran 7,500 miles. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yep. So if you guys go on his TikTok page, and I kind of went through and watched a couple of them the last couple of days since we talked and knew he was coming on here. And one of the days he was saying, he's like, gas is expensive. And he has the gas in the background. He's like, I'm just going to run to, what was it, like Riverside or where was it?
No, I ran all the way to San Clemente, which is like 100 miles away.
Yeah. So
I ran from Redlands to San Clemente.
That's a long poke, man.
So, yeah.
Probably
How'd you
faster
get
than
back?
driving on the 10 and the 5, though.
Well, they have a trail that goes from, it's like called the Santa Ana River Trail, and it just follows the freeway. So I just took it. The hard part was running through like Laguna Beach and like Newport Beach because there's no sidewalks. And all those rich people drive like really fast. And I ran it at night because it took me 18 hours to run the 100 miles. So it was a little sketchy. I had all these lights on me. I looked like a Christmas tree, but it was a little sketchy.
So let's talk about some of the obstacles you faced, because I know a couple stories I want to hit on. One is I think the longest race you've done is 250 miles. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
So anybody who's listening, an ultra marathon is basically over 100 miles. Like that's the short version of it. It could be trails, it could be roads, it could be out and backs, it could be roundabouts. You could have a support team. There's another guy that I did a podcast with a while back. He does them as well. And they're like the support teams make a big difference, but like you guys take a beating on your body. A buddy of mine I used to run races with, we would just do like 5-10 Ks and just do laps around over and over and over again. And like I'd be cooked, and he's like, "Let's keep going." I'm like, "Dude, I can't feel my legs anymore. I'm tapping out this time." So my hat's off to you, because you guys definitely push through the pain more than the average person does. Tell me about the longest race and the hardest race that you've done.
So I've done it's a 257 miler in Arizona. It starts outside of Phoenix and runs to Flagstaff. So it's point to point through the mountains. Everyone thinks Arizona is a desert, but actually northern Arizona is all mountains, and Flagstaff is actually at I think it's at 7,000 feet above sea level. So it's pretty high. It has 40 something thousand feet of vertical climbing. So you're doing a lot of big climbing up and down mountains, remote trails. They have aid stations maybe every 15 to 20 miles in between. So you have to carry large amounts of food and water, and all sorts of supplies. You go through Sedona at some point, it was 96 degrees, so very hot. And then you climb up onto the plateau of Flagstaff, and at nighttime it got to be 28 degrees. So a 70 degree shift in temperature. And you're just out there, grinding the whole time. They have little sleep stations where you can they have some cots and stuff like that you can sleep on every once in a while. That one was pretty hard. I did it self-supported, which means I didn't have any crew with me, and I didn't have anybody run with me or do anything. So everything I had to do, I had to manage on my own, which after running for several days, your mind starts to get a little foggy. So it makes it harder, amazing. But that's what I like. I mean, I do occasionally, my wife will crew me. But normally it's only in races. If we're going somewhere exotic, I do a race in France, and she'll be like, "Oh, I want to go to France." And then she'll crew me out there. But American races, I pretty much do completely solo by myself, because I like the added challenge of having to survive on my own. It's not really, because you have aid stations, they have water and food, and those people are nice and they take care of you. But any other sort of thing, I have to be in charge of. So on this 250-mile race, a lot of people have cars that follow them, and the cars can carry all their gear. But because I'm out there by myself, I have to carry all the gear that I would need for the whole race with me. So hot gear, cold gear, everything, and it's in like a backpack that I'm running with. So if it rains, I have a rain jacket. If it, gets really cold, I got gloves, and I have to like sort of pre-plan all this stuff beforehand. I'd like to say that's the hardest race, but I think the hardest race that I've done is it's called UTMB, and it's in the Alps of France, Switzerland, and Italy, and it's a 106-mile race with 36,000 feet of like 10,000 meters of vert over 100 miles, and you basically run up and down 12 mountains in Europe. You run from France into Italy, Italy into Switzerland, and then Switzerland back into France. And it's just a brutally rugged race. The Alps are very unforgiving, and the weather gets really crazy. And one year I did it, it snowed like every time you got above 8,000 feet, and then rained the whole rest of the time. So like I think it took me 36 hours to do 100 miles, and it was raining or snowing the whole time. So that's probably the hardest race I've ever done. So I've done it 3 time zone. One time the weather was perfect, and it was still hard, but not as hard. But weather makes a big factor.
Didn't you do Mount Fuji, the one in Mount Fuji?
I did, but that one, the year I did it, they had like a monsoon hit, and I've talked about it before, but basically I almost died. I got stuck in a mudslide on the side of a mountain. It took me like 7 hours to extricate myself. And by the time I extricated myself, got back down off the mountain, they had like canceled the race because of the conditions got so bad. So, but yeah, that was I honestly almost like quit running after that race, because it was like I literally thought I was going to die for like 7 hours. It was so traumatic that it took me a couple months to like get back on my feet and like enjoy running again, because I was like, it broke me as like a person for a little bit.
How do you run 150 miles like while you're trying to recover from something like that? Because you said you've done it for like, I don't know, like 11 years. You've ran like 150 miles or something a week. Like, isn't there at a certain point where you're like, you know what, I might be doing more damage than maybe I should be recovering more? Or did you take that week off, or how's that work?
No. I mean, I guess like I never really recover, but I also, I sort of subscribe to the philosophy of active recovery. So it's like, I just finished this 100-mile race on Saturday, like a couple days ago. From in Arizona, I drove home, ate some food, took a nap, woke up, ran 5 miles. So I just finished a 100-mile race, and then a few hours later, I ran 5 miles, and then went to bed, woke up, and I ran 17 miles the next day. I ran 20 something miles the next day. Yesterday, I ran 23. I'll probably run 26 today. So for whatever reason, like my body, enjoys movement. So I'm sore, but I feel like I get more sore if I don't do anything. Like if I just sit around, the body's just going to lock up.
I bet that the ride back was probably rough.
Yeah, it was
like after
pretty bad.
Yeah. So
yeah,
no, I was just curious because
car ride, and
yeah, I'm sure the first hour was welcomed, and then after that, it was like, oh god, this is horrible. So when you're training that much, like obviously you probably run a little bit faster than the three of us, but like still to go 26 miles in a day, go do 5 miles, probably can squeeze that one in. You're talking about a pretty significant time commitment outside of just of everyday life and work. And I don't know if you have kids, but like just stuff like that. So how have you managed to basically carve that kind of time out of each day? I mean, I get it, the whole like priority or it's an excuse type situation, but like some of those distances, I would imagine like an 18-hour run, you got to plan some of this stuff out. Like you just don't do it on a whim, I wouldn't think.
Well, I mean, the easy answer is that I wake up every morning at 2:30 to 3:30, and I get most of my long runs done before like my family and everyone wakes up. Same at work. Firehouse, I wake up 2:30, 3:30 when everyone's still sleeping, and I run while everyone's sleeping. Obviously 911 calls come in, and I respond. I just run little loops around the fire service or the firehouse, but I don't really, an 18-mile run to me is not really like that big a deal. And so I don't really plan it. I just go out and run. Sometimes I'll have like a destination where I'll think to myself, well, I'm going to run there, and I'll run there. But I can go with no food or water for like any run pretty much under 20 miles. I'll go no food, no water, and just go out and just run. I like the feeling of bonking. So I try to like get myself to bonk. And the easiest way to do that is to be no calories, no water,
dehydrated and hungry.
Well, here's the thing: is like I know my body really well. Obviously, I obviously know what I'm capable of, and I hydrate before I run really, really well. So before I start running, I'll be super hydrated, and then if I'm going to run 20 miles, I might be dehydrated by the end, but then I'll just drink some more water. So it's more or less just the in between that. And when I race, I don't subscribe to that philosophy. When I race, I eat and drink a lot. So I'm not like, I try to tell people I'm not a good coach. Like I wouldn't like follow what I do, but what I do works for me. And maybe that's like, the whole idea of an outlier, somebody that does something different than what everybody tells you to do. And I'm a little bit of an outlier when it comes to that sort of stuff, because I don't subscribe to all the rest days and, don't do this and don't eat this and, only, do speed workouts and do this and that. Like I totally like do whatever I want to do. I'm 44 years old. I don't do any speed workouts, zero. You know why? Because I hate running fast. You said I probably run faster than you guys. I probably don't. I run really slow, like 10 to 12 minute miles on my runs. I just cruise. I keep myself in zone 2 all the time, because that's what a 100-mile race is a zone 2 workout. So, it's kind of like, I'm fun to watch, but I wouldn't try to emulate what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
But you got your fitness down to a science. Like, what your body can endure, what you can put it through, your water retention, what to eat, what electrolytes to take in. You're not a meat eater, so what your caloric intake is going to look like, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And your expenditure. So you have a very strong grasp, more than most people, on what it's going to take for your body to endure to get through point A to point B. So
right, and it's my body, totally just my body. Like I can't tell you what your body's going to need or anything like that. It's just I'm an expert at Andy Glaze, and that's it.
So when I was 30 years old, I climbed Kilimanjaro for my 30th birthday out in Tanzania, Kenya border, and it was interesting to see. Like at 14,000 feet is where I started to get a little bit of altitude sickness, and by 19,000 feet, I had lungs that were like I felt like that was full of fluid. Whereas the person I was with was like, no problem, just keep on trucking along. Like it didn't affect them at all. And they weren't in better shape than me. They just weren't affected by it. So everybody's obviously going to be affected by different strains and pulls and tears in your body than somebody else is going to be. So you obviously know your body. You can go out and do 18 miles. A lot of firefighters can't go out and do 2 miles nowadays, but that's a whole nother story. So we were talking before this, and you were saying that you want to motivate other first responders to go out and be healthier. And you're doing that through your social media presence, right?
I am. Because I do have, I put pictures of myself at the fire service or fire station, like videos of me running, and just, I get a lot of messages from firefighters that it motivates them to go out and, exercise, work out. I think that in general, we spend too much time in the blue chairs. I'm assuming the blue chairs are universal, not just a California thing, but I definitely take a nap every day. I'm not going to lie, in the blue chairs after lunch. But besides that, I do not really ever see the blue chairs, because I would rather be working out or doing something than sitting there watching TV. So, that's another thing when we were talking about time management and how I get all this stuff done. Like, I don't watch TV. I do spend time on social media, but normally it's minimal. Just more or less just to like respond to things that like are on my page. But like at work, I'm not a TV watcher. I don't do any of that. I'd rather just be out running or doing something like that. And I hope that I know like when you're young and you're on probation and stuff like that, you can't sit in the blue chairs anyway, but a lot of people spend a little too much time there and a little too much time relaxing. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope that if people see me out there grinding away fire station loops, like little teeny, like 1/10 of a mile loops, like on repeat all night, like that, like it'll motivate them to, maybe go out and run 1 mile. That's good enough for me. It's all about the journey. Everyone starts at 0 and works their way up, and just running a little bit every day or just working out a little bit each day, it builds and it builds and it builds, and you'll get healthier. And so that's
one of my old captain that retired, he was on a weight loss journey, and every day he would walk. So we would just literally walk together and walk laps around the firehouse and up and down the street, and then might go on the treadmill, stuff like that. Just like little things that made a big difference. I think he ended up dropping something like 30 pounds, and now he's a distance runner as well. Even to this day, like I have the habit when I call my wife, I'll just walk circles around the firehouse. And guys are like, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm talking to my wife, man. I'm getting my steps in, and they're like, "You're, stupid. You're dumb." And you get a lot of love and a lot of hate on your profiles. Like you got guys who want to tell you how to train and how to recover and what you should and shouldn't be doing. Like I've seen both of it. You got a lot of support in one hand, but you got a lot of hate in the other for no reason. And I don't understand that in our culture, is that like, if he's doing something to better himself and try to get other people healthy, why are you giving him hate? So
that's the internet, right? What's Goggins saying? Something like, you'll never find a hater that works harder than you, or something like that. It's like, that's the internet there, and especially in the fire service, because we're public service. Everyone wants to tell you how your tax dollars should be spent. I don't want my tax dollars spent with you running. Okay, well, cool.
I'll go over here and get fat then.
Yeah.
I mean, just go sit in the blue chair then and eat ho-hos.
Well, and a lot of it's education. A lot of people don't understand what we do. But cardiovascular disease is like the number one killer of firefighters. And I get that a lot of that probably is involved in, us not sleeping well, and, the adrenaline rush of a call every time, and all that sort of stuff obviously plays a factor in our cardiovascular health, and inhaling smoke and all that, being exposed to all that stuff. But, being fat is a part of that too. And there are a lot of overweight firefighters, and I'm not a big fan. I have a hard time with that. I think I'd rather, and you can be fat and then like start working out and lose it. And I respect that. But the ones that don't do that just like take the job for granted. I've been here 20 years, I'm working on my engineer belly or whatever. Like, I'm just not a fan. Like, I think it's a physical job, and we should take pride in our
physical
frankly,
fitness.
It's
selfish. I view that as just being selfish. Like, obviously you only care about you. Like, and when we roll out these doors, like, we're a team, and like, if you're the weakest link on this team because you can't walk from here to there without getting winded, like, I'm not saying you need to be Glaze and running, 44 miles a day and stuff, but like, you should have some personal responsibility. Like, I signed up for a physically demanding job. Right. But, Aaron's comment, did you see that dude or that girl that told me to go play in traffic? Like, just talking about the internet, like, she was downright hateful. She's like, you need to go play in traffic. I was like, geez, it's triggering.
Yeah. Oh, the internet's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, but whatever, like, you gotta just let the people say their piece. And
well, no matter what you do, they're going to hate on you too. I mean, if you work out too much, why are you working out so much on our tax dollars? If you don't do anything, look at that guy. He's a slob. He's out of shape. I can't believe he's actually a fireman. And you're never going to win. I think once you just quit paying attention to those people, and like you said, anybody who's hating on you is obviously doing much less than you. And that's why I talked to my daughter about this last night on the way home from her practice. I said, here's the thing. People are going to hate on you because they see you doing something that they're too lazy to do. And as opposed to get off their butt and to go do something, It's a lot easier to tear you down from the comfort of their own house on their phone and talk trash about what you're doing. I mean, it's just a sad reality of social media, which is why I'm not a huge fan of it. And I like Aaron, I went through all your stuff and I saw both the hate and the love. And it's just funny because what you're doing is polarizing, right? I mean, you're running extreme distances, but that's what you love to do. And these people want to hate on it. And I see the training stuff too. And I had mentioned to Aaron last night, I didn't know this was you prior to this podcast, but the video of you at the top of the stick.
Oh yeah. That's me.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that. And I had seen a bunch of, I'm like, dude, people get heated over stuff now. And it's like, he's climbing to the top of the stick in his full gear. I mean, unless you're like, shooting selfies at the top and not clipped in or something.
Why is that a problem?
It was polarizing, right? I mean,
yeah, people got really upset about that. I guess, West Coast, like we climbed the stick all the time. I mean, I'm a truck captain. I got to show my guys that like I'm physically fit to be able to do it too. And the funny thing is, so it's like, it's a 360 camera and it's attached to my bottle. So it makes it look like it's a little bit more dramatic than it is. But that was just like, that was an 80-degree angle. That's defensive operation. Like that's all we were doing. It was like, it wasn't anything crazy. No, it was 70 degrees, 80 feet. So it wasn't even like, it just looks way more dramatic. But everyone's like, oh, you need a belay line and you need all this stuff. And we don't do that on the West Coast. I mean, maybe.
We don't either.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I don't know.
Like in recruit school, the first time they ever do it, and that's it. They have fall protection. But like, when was the last time you set up a ladder pipe on a fire? And hold on, I got to get the 3-to-1 out and get a belay line.
Yeah, we would never. I mean, we would never do that.
Yeah,
I mean, Tyler, who worked in LA County, like if you're setting up for defensive operations on the corner of a building, you're going to be spraying water in there. You send somebody up to the top to spray water in. I mean, that's what you do. And yeah, I had a ladder belt on, and when you get to the top, you clip in, right? I mean, but it's not. Yeah, people got heated over that video. Again, I think it's more the angle, though. It really did make it look sort of dramatic, but
angle and lighting, bro.
Yeah, 70 degrees at 80 feet. That's all. Well, it wasn't even 100 feet. It wasn't even fully extended. So
let's talk about the health aspect of this. So you obviously do it to stay healthy. You want guys to be healthy. Let's talk about mindset. Like when you started doing this running, Tyler was saying you get into dark places for mental health, right? So a lot of guys, then this is important to you, is the PTSD aspect of it. So because all of us in this podcast right now are over 40 years old, all of us probably had a dip in our testosterone, and that's just normal. And the dip in testosterone, a lot of the health side effects of a dip in testosterone mirror PTSD. So if you have PTSD and you have a dip in your testosterone, it can be a detrimental burden that you get to carry on your shoulders. So walk me through some of the things like the roads you go down to try to help guys and what you're doing to kind of bring it to the forefront. Like, what are you doing to kind of like make this apparent to people?
I mean, I've done a ton of podcasts on like, my mental health and running. And occasionally I do like mental health, like videos on my social media where I talk about it, just to bring light to it, just to let people know like, hey, I know that this all looks like great and everything, but I struggle too. Cause I do. I mean, I do struggle. For me, like the running really quiets my mind. I don't know. I think probably everybody has a different PTSD sort of like symptoms, but for me, it's like I have like a lot of noise in my head all the time. And like an anxiety type in my brain. And so when I run, that quiets down, which is obviously very soothing. When I do these ultra marathons, I think what makes them sort of addictive to me is like when I get to a certain point, like 50 or 60 miles, like my brain literally just shuts off. And like I have no thoughts other than like how to survive. Which is very, very soothing, because, I always have stuff going on in my head that like I can't turn off.
So I get the same way. So runners, we'll talk about runner's high. So some people, when they run, they never get that runner's high. They never get the endorphin dump. But other guys, like if they run a mile or other guys or gals, they run a mile and they get this endorphin dump where like elates them. They feel good. They feel energized. So I'm with you. Like my thing is woodwork. Used to be running before I tore my ankle up. I was doing trails all the time. But like you need to find out what works for you. And obviously it's running. So have you talked to other guys? And this is for Mike, Tyler, me, and you. Like, have you ever talked to other guys? Like, what makes you shut your mind off and makes you like focus on the positive? Like, have you ever had these conversations with other people before in person? Mike, I know Mike's also a captain out in his fire department. Mike, do you ever talk to your guys about this?
I would say we've talked about it more. You're talking about like what specifically shuts your mind off?
Or just like what helps cope? What's your coping mechanism? What are you doing as a healthy route? Yeah,
so I can tell you, and I just got a new guy on my shift and we were chit-chatting. And one of the things we talked about was the IAFF Center for Excellence for folks that need help and just about mental health and in general. Because frankly, like I haven't been in the fire service 30 years or anything, but just in my time, I've seen a big shift in what was just never talked about to now it's like, you know, there's this program, there's PTSD, et cetera. There's all these resources, but sometimes I still feel like it's kind of taboo to talk about. So I've been working towards like, how do I bring that into just like everyday conversation with my guys? Because when I was at recruit training this last time, the second time, I had a recruit who did not graduate. However, like he was AWOL one day and come to find out he had been committed to the hospital and had a gun and a note. And like, I was like, holy shit, you know, I was maybe one of the last people he spoke to. Like, how would I deal with that? Not to sound selfish, but like right. He did it. He didn't like, right. So he got help. He walked to the hospital and got help. So I was just like, that was probably the smack between the eyes where I was like, oh my God, like what would I have done? You know, like, and furthermore, what if there's other people thinking like this? Like I just didn't even think about it. So now ever since then, like I'm a big proponent of talking about it with my guys, right. What that looks like to them. And like, just making it not like this conversation that they can't have, because several of my friends have been to the Center of Excellence or some other program.
Mike, explain what that is for me. The Center of Excellence.
Yeah. So it's basically in Aaron's backyard. It's the International Association of Firefighters Center for Excellence. And it's I don't know if inpatient is the proper term, but basically.
There's and outpatient options. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you can go there. So like Tyler or Glaze, somebody from California could come there and it's, I think, a 30-day program. And they basically, it is only firefighters. Like, and it is like, it is, yeah, basically IFF members, like, here it is. Like they have people that only speak your language and understand shift work and the family dynamic and the calls and the PTSD and, you know, whatever it may be. So again, this is not firsthand experience. So I'm only going based off what I know from friends I know that have gone and the literature. So everybody I've talked to speaks extremely highly of it. You know, like, but you can't not have the fire department spin because they call it like passages of PG and stuff like this. Like they, of course, have to joke around with it, right? Or they, right. You know, but it's such a good resource that's available at no charge to anybody that's an IFF member, you know, and not to go the career volunteer route, but like that resource is dedicated to that grouping of people. But there are many different programs out there for folks. So, yeah, we just. To answer Aaron's question, like we bring it up, or I bring it up in conversation a lot more than I used to. And I still think you have the older guys that like, oh, you'll be fine. Like keep on going, like whatever. But then you have guys that like, that it's just, I don't want to say two different worlds, but like you just have a different generation. And I think that there's some really excellent people in that generation, just like there's been excellent people and always will be for every generation, but they may not know how to manage those because before they used to come back and maybe sit in the blue chairs and smoke a cigar or a cigarette and shoot the shit for an hour and kind of, in essence, decompress and debrief, where now everybody retreats to their bunk and gets on their goddamn phone, right? And it's like, no, they don't have that time to just sit there and kind of like decompress. Like, and I've heard about it in the military. Like we were joking, you look like a skinnier Jocko, right? I've heard him mention that back in the day, like they came back from war, they had a ship ride across the ocean for several days or weeks to kind of decompress, where now, you know, they fly them to Germany, they fly them to DC, and they're back in their base in, you know, 12 hours, where before they had that decompression time and now they don't. So they've had to institute like, hey, you get back, you still have to wait X number of days or whatever it is before you can in essence be released back to the wild. So I don't know.
And I think we're running a lot more calls now too. So there's less time for that decompression, right? I mean, we're like, in general, fire departments are busier than they were back when the older guys were firemen at the time. So, I mean, there's less time to decompress in between calls. You know, you're running back to back calls, you know, a couple of them might be super traumatic. So it builds up.
And a lot of how your response to a lot of these calls is how you were raised and what you're exposed to. So like, if you were raised as a hunter and you're used to seeing death, it's not going to affect you as much as somebody who's never seen death before. So obviously, like if Tyler's a hunter growing up and he's killed animals, he's killed deer, buffalo, whatever, and he's used to seeing what death looks like. But me, if I came from, you know, suburbia or city boy and I've never hunted before, I've never seen death, and the first time I ever see somebody die is on a call, it's going to be more traumatic for me. Is that true across the board? No, it's a general statement, but it's one of those things like you have to look at each other, understand where you're coming from for them to understand how they're going to respond, and ask them like, if this is your crew and this is your guys, you need to check on them.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you're younger, like you don't think about these things. So it's nice, like Mike was saying, to have the captain like be like, hey, this is going to happen. And you kind of like get them in that mindset, because it's kind of like when you're young, you feel invincible, right? Mentally invincible and then physically invincible. And we're looking at it from a different perspective. The captains, when I was growing up, would never talk about it. So I think it's important for captains, chiefs, whatever, higher up, to talk about it more, make it more normal. You know, if I'm going to be on social media talking about myself as a firefighter, I think it's important to say, hey, I have PTSD. I struggle emotionally on stuff. And like, you know, there's these resources or there's things you can do to make yourself feel better without the drinking, without the like, you know, whatever you're doing negative to like deal with it. So,
Tyler, I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I know LA County has some wild stuff going on there. So like, I see you post some stuff in the chat. Like, what do you think about the topic?
As far as just like the mental health and stuff like that? Yeah, I mean,
things you commented on.
Yeah. What I put in the chat, you know, one of my captains has always said, you know, every one of us, if you imagine a cup full of water, and you're constantly, each call, you're just putting a drip. And for Aaron or for myself, that final drop that's going to cause all that water to spill out and all over the place are two different things. And we never know when that's going to happen. And if we don't take time to kind of, you know, clear some of that stuff out, we're going to have a problem. So like for me, like you guys are talking about cell phones and stuff like that. Not that I'm that old. I've only been on the job for 12 years. But like a big thing for me is like when you go back with your crew and you guys BS, drink coffee, go around the table, that's huge. That's how we decompress. And for LA County, it was interesting because most of us have all been involved in some type of team sport, team activity when we were growing up. That's how we relate to each other, and that's how we decompress. But for LA County, for years, that was taken away from us because of what the public perception was, that you guys are playing sports on our tax dollar time, not realizing that, hey, this is how guys decompress naturally after going on so many calls. And to your point, Glaze, it's like we're running more calls, so that the chance to go back and decompress is getting less and less and less and less. So they said, hey, we're going to put team sports back in to our department and see how that helps the mental health. And yeah, I mean, the last few years, you know, suicides have gone up. We had a shooting in our department where one member shot and killed another, and it was a lot. And there's a bunch of stuff that's going on. And I think, you know, that focus is coming to the forefront because it's necessary. And yeah, nobody wants to talk about it. And yeah, you know, like Mike said, the previous generation, like, you're soft, just deal with it. And I don't think it's really anybody being soft. It's like, hey, we're realizing that maybe this had effects that we didn't realize, and everybody deals with it differently. Like, you know, for Glaze running, doing all that kind of stuff. For me, like I talked about, and I would love to hear your point on it, is I used to love chasing that dark space in my head. I liked running because at first it would be working all this stuff out. And then at a certain point, definitely not 50 miles, I would hit a quiet spot where I was like, and I would just go and enjoy that last part of the run, because it's like I was able to work out, whether it's work, home, whatever. It's been processed. And for me, it's definitely team sports. It's definitely running. And I think a lot of the stuff that we're doing now as a department is good, but I think it can always be improved. And, you know, the 80s was not all, but the 80s, 70s, 60s was so much fire, so much fewer medical calls. I was talking to a buddy yesterday. He's trying to make me feel better. And he's like,
that would help a lot.
Yeah, right. Well, he said to me, he's like, well, you're not missing anything right now. All we're doing is going on medicals and very few fires. And I think that's the reality of it. I think I saw a stat in one of the hospitals we were in. It's like it's increased by like 75% as far as medical calls go from a certain era. And so for me personally, I can't do it anymore right now. Hopefully one day I can again, but running for me was huge. Our crew did a Spartan race together. Super fun. All these things that you do like that, I think it's huge for us. And I think most of us like to push the envelope. I definitely know I do. And the way I am right now physically, that's the number one thing I miss about the job and just in my day-to-day life is I get frustrated and I get irritated because I cannot go do hard things. I want to go push myself mentally. I want to go see what I'm made of. It is what it is. Climbing that top of that ladder, going all the way to the top, those things are how I deal with a lot of stuff. And it sounds like you're the same way. And so when I saw you talking about the pain cave, I was like, yeah, that's right down my alley.
Let's talk about it. I mean, let's bring it up. It's a good part of his video content. What's the pain cave?
I mean, so the idea of the pain cave is that the mind and the body are linked, but that the body experiences pain and then it tells the mind, I'm in pain, you need to stop, because, you know, that's like the normal human response. And when you do really hard things like ultras or, you know, anything hard like that, obviously you have to push through that pain, that pain, unless it's like egregious injury, like you see bone or blood. It's your body's probably lying to yourself. And so as you run these very long races, you feel a lot of pain and you just have to like mentally work your way through it. And like the best way I can describe it is like my first 20 miles, I feel all sorts of pain. Like my ankles will hurt and then my knees will hurt and then my hips will hurt and then my back will hurt and then my knees will hurt again and then my feet. And then it's like, it just shifts around. And the whole time I'm just like basically trying to ignore it, but realizing it's there. And that cave just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And you just keep working through it. And it's all in your head. Like it's all just like a mental challenge of how do I get through this pain, and realizing that it's real, but it's not real. Like it's because it'll be there and then it won't. So what happened to it? Where did it go? Like, it's having them like sort of like the emotional, like maturity to understand that it's like sort of fake, even though it's real. And the best way I can describe it is like, I will literally feel like I cannot run another step. And then 2 miles later, I'll be running a 9-minute mile downhill and be feeling great. Well, how does that possible? How is it that I literally felt like I could no longer move forward and now I'm running a 9-minute mile? Well, it's because my mind is stronger than my body. And so a lot of what I do is mental strength training, because in these ultra runs, it's all about your mind. It's not really about your body. Like you have to like train your mind and then like your body will do what your mind tells it to do. Now obviously there's some sort of physical, I have to be physically fit enough to do 100 miles, but I've had races where I've mentally have like collapsed and given up and like stopped the race. And I think physically I could have kept going, but mentally I could not. And then I've had races where my body was like totally wrecked and I was still able to like push through. This last 100 miler I did like a couple days ago. The last mile, it's 3:00 in the morning. I've been running for 22 hours straight. I have a mile to go and I've been literally by myself running in the dark for hours, not really seeing anybody. I know the course. I know that I'm about a mile away. And all of a sudden behind me, I see a headlamp. I got somebody coming up on me, and I'm like, I'm not going to let this person pass me with a mile to go. I've run 90, well, it was a 102-mile race. So I've run 101 miles, and I'm not going to lose one place. Not that one place even matters, but I was in the hurt box. I was like struggling. It was technical. All of a sudden I'm running a 10.5-minute mile down this technical trail with this guy chasing me. The last quarter mile is like flat road, and I was running like an 8:45, and finished like a minute ahead of this guy. And how did I do that? Like it's all just in your head, right? It's just
Tanya
mental.
Harding.
Yeah,
you're just like, come on, buddy.
I'm just saying, like, the mind is really, really powerful. And so in a lot of these instances, like, pain is just all up here, and you just have to figure out how to like compartmentalize it and push past it. I always I tell my son all the time, I'm like, you take pain and you put it in a box, you put the box in that room, you shut the door and you lock it. And it's kind of what you have to do. Now, other pain will show up and you got to figure out what to do with it. But the mind is like super, super strong. And if you can train your mind to be strong, you can like get past like a lot of things.
A buddy of mine I used to train with, my buddy Cadillac. One day he asked one of the recruits, he goes, "Are you in pain or are you hurt? They're two different things."
Exactly.
And that always resonated with me. I was like, that's an interesting way to put things in perspective.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your son. Oh, go ahead.
What's that?
I said, you mentioned your son, and I saw you running with him, and all these things that you learned, I'm assuming you're passing on down to him. Does he do a lot of training with you, or is it just kind of whenever he wants to go run with dad?
I don't like put a whole lot of pressure on him, but he does like to run like 2 to 3 miles with me. Okay. He's pretty physically active, like rides bikes a lot and does that sort of stuff. But the thing is, I think it sets a good example for your kids too. If your kids see you like working out, like my wife works out, she's not a big runner, but she does like the gym and CrossFit and that sort of stuff. She's really into that. So our kids see us as an example of us working out all the time. And I think that's important. Like they're going to know that that's important to us. And, I don't ever want to force my kids to work out, 'cause I don't want it to turn into like that sort of like thing, but they definitely see physical fitness as a priority because of it. And my son, we've run a couple 5Ks together and stuff like that. He's only 11. So, as he gets like a little bit older, starts to go through puberty and stuff, then we'll start probably getting into the weights and all that sort of stuff. But, yeah,
let's talk about safety. So, like I was thinking about this the other day, the guy who got stuck in a canyon out in Utah had to cut his arm off. And then your story popped up where I'm just going to let you tell the story.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. So the movie set was 72 hours or 48 hours, something like that. It was a popular movie probably 10 years ago where a guy got stuck because he didn't tell anybody where he was going. Nobody was looking for him. They didn't know he was missing. Had to cut his arm off to get out. So I always think about safety when you do stuff like this, when you're out away from people, like let them know where you are. So like there's a story that you told about the deer on a trail behind the firehouse. So can you tell that story again? So they'll tell people why, to tell others where you are.
Yeah. Okay. So for two things, like I do tell people where I'm going. I also, when I go really remote places, I have one of those Garmin InReaches, it's like a GPS satellite beacon. And so my wife can always see where I'm at. It sends a ping every 10 minutes of my location. And then if I were to be gravely injured, it has like a "oh shit" button that you can press on it. And it like will send the cavalry to come save you if
I can't get up button.
Yeah, but it's like the you're out in the middle of nowhere, they'll send a helicopter or something. True. But where my city is, where I work, we have like a pretty intense urban wildland interface. We get bears, lots of deer, coyotes, bobcats, and occasionally mountain lions. But it's rare. Anyways, I was out running. I like to run up in those trails like above the fire station. And I was running up there I was on my way back to the station, and I came around a turn, and there was a large buck like charging me. And I mean, I've seen thousands of deer my whole life. I've never seen a deer run towards me. They always run away. And then of course I have that like split second, like, oh man, look at the antlers on that thing. Cause we get a lot of forkies out here, but we don't get a lot of like big bucks. And this thing had a nice rack on it. But that was just like the split second. And then it's like, oh shit, that antler is going to like get me. I mean, it was like head down coming at me fast. And I'm just on like a trail. And so I just freeze and I just start screaming. And the last second, the deer just went around me. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, you have that flash of like, that would have really hurt and everything. And I look up and there's like a 180-pound mountain lion racing after the deer right behind it. So now I'm standing in between a mountain lion. Yeah. I'm standing in between a mountain lion and a deer. And I'm in the middle, and this thing's like charging me. Well, I kept screaming, and the mountain lion at the last second jumped off the side of the mountain and went down into the bushes. And that's the only time I've ever seen a mountain lion and all the thousands of miles I've run out in these mountains. So it was pretty crazy. And then of course I'm thinking to myself, that mountain lion's in that bush right there. And so like I back down the trail screaming and making as much noise as I could. And, luckily he must've continued on down the mountain or whatever. But, yeah, obviously if something had happened, like they would have, just found my dead body and that little like trail beacon, like going off or something. But, yeah, because I have a family and a wife and all that stuff, I do try to let people know where I'm at and like let that thing be activated so that if anything were to happen to me. I've had all sorts of crazy falls and cracked my head open and done all sorts of stuff. And I've always been able to self-extricate, but maybe one time I won't, maybe one time I'll break my leg or something and I'll be way too far to be able to get out. So it's like $20 a month for a subscription. And for me, it's totally worth it because I do a lot of stuff in the remote areas of California.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, so we're coming up, we got probably about 10 minutes left. We've covered a wide range of topics here, from playing chicken with mountain lions and PTSD and offending people on social media. But so like, we kind of talked about why you're recording your journey, right? You got a pretty big social media presence to help motivate folks, but like, what's kind of like the next goal? Like what are you trying to reach or obtain from here? Like you've run this race, you've run that race, is there something that you're still searching for? And do you feel like that's kind of a part of this, I don't know what character trait you have, where it's like you have to be like pushing yourself and like you're just kind of sailing to a horizon that you'll never reach? Or what is the goal here? Are you just going to run till your knees give out? Or is there something you want to obtain before a certain amount of time? Or
I don't know if I have an overarching goal like that. I mean, I'm just having a good time. Honestly, I'm just, I love to run, and I'm just, there's so many races. There's so many places I want to like go and run and visit. Like, yeah, I don't know. My social media, it's like right now I'm enjoying that I'm able to inspire so many people. I'm not sponsored. I don't make any money off this. I do it all literally just to help people. And just like I said, what's that?
If somebody offered you a sponsorship, would you take it? Like, would it be
like a t-shirt?
No, I literally, I get probably like 5 to 10 emails a day from companies, from Under Armour to watch companies to everyone that want to sponsor me, but I don't take any of them.
Yeah.
Because because I want to be like authentic. And I think that when you take sponsorships, and I have a lot of friends that are sponsored and I think it's great, but I think it takes away from the message. And the message I'm trying to get out is like, I'm trying to inspire people. I'm trying to motivate people. A lot of the people that follow me are not ultra runners. They're just runners, or they're older people that just they just need a little bit of extra motivation to go run a mile or two. And, I got into the fire service. Like I said, I wanted to help people, and it's great. I've helped a lot of people. But I'm finding that I'm helping a lot more people through social media, just being like a positive influence. Like we were saying, there's so much negativity on social media, and like if I can be one of the people out there that's just positive all the time, I think it's sort of refreshing, and not to be like, hey, try this goo, and hey, look at my hat. It's like, whatever,
Is that a first responder financial freedom hat? Oh my God.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, if you want to make money, social media, you can do it. But
so isn't it funny that we kind of started this, like you wanted to do something because you didn't feel like you were making a difference behind a computer screen, and here you are using
social media as a platform to make a difference.
To make it. I mean, that's what I mean. I always kind of use the thing with social media, like Tyler said, he doesn't like it, and trust me, I definitely had this like love-hate relationship with it. But I just kind of think if you can be the creator and not the consumer type with it, and use it as a platform or a podium to just help amplify your message, if it is positive, like what you're doing, it's a great tool. It's a great resource. But I think, and I'm guilty of it too at times, like we use it as a consumer and not a creator. So
right.
I don't know. I just thought that was funny. Like you said, like you're making such a big difference with social media, and it's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
But I'm in Facebook jail right now for another 12 hours. So, I'm off social media for a couple hours.
Facebook's dead, my friend. You gotta switch it up. Facebook's
TikTok
dead.
Is where it's at. I'm trying to tell Tyler that too.
Yeah.
I still feel too old to be on TikTok.
I get the best engagement on Instagram still. I mean, TikTok's cool. I have 125,000 followers, but I sometimes think they're mostly just 14-year-old kids, and I don't know if they can really relate with me, but on Instagram, I have a very good collection of runners and firefighters that are very, very active. So I don't know.
So let me ask you a couple of questions before we wrap this up. Is there anything else that you want to touch on that we missed? Or you good with?
The only thing I could say is I'm obsessed with ice baths, and I think that if you have not tried one, that I highly encourage it. I think I'm not a doctor or scientist, but I think that it also helps with PTSD because it gives you an intense dopamine rush, which is kind of like taking an antidepressive. And two, the second you get in, your brain shuts off because your body goes into shock, and you have to focus on your breathing, and it's very nice to have your brain just instantly shut off the second you get in. So side note, I know they're all the rage right now. Rogan's doing it and all this stuff, but
dude, I see him all the time now. Every time I get on some sort of social media, one of my buddies is jumping in a plastic bin from Tractor Supply filled with ice.
That's cubes. Where I got him at the fire. Because I'm the union president, and we got Tractor Supply Rubbermaid tubs at all the stations because we all have ice machines at all the stations. So it's free ice and 100 gallons. And I've gotten a bunch of guys in a bunch of different departments to buy them. I think it's great, and there's a lot of science behind it. Maybe it helps with recovery, maybe it doesn't, but the big science is the mental health and also the mental toughness. You're forcing yourself to do something you do not want to do, and we all need more of that.
About that a lot.
Yeah, we need more of that in our lives. We need I've done it. I do it every day, and every day I'm like my wife just brought in ice right now, and I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to go do this ice bath right now as soon as I'm off this podcast. And even though I know it's gonna make me feel good, I'm gonna stress about it for the next 5 minutes until I go do it.
So it's funny because I meant to bring that up earlier as one of the topics I want to touch on. When I did I used to do the polar bear plunge for Special Olympics every year, and it was definitely one of those things. As soon as you hit the icy water, it's everything shuts down and you're just focused on oh my God, I got to get out of here. But to your point, the mental toughness is stay in a little longer. And once you have an ice bath, the next day you feel 100% better. Which is why a lot of the college athletes do it. They do ice baths and cold freezes because their body recovers faster. So I'm glad you brought that up. So
it's cryo. I love cryo too. Do you think that that's more intense than cryo?
I haven't done cryo. Okay. I should check it out.
I think it's more intense. I think ice baths are more cryo. I do.
Okay. I like crowd because of the mental aspect. That's why I laugh when you said that, because they're like, "Oh, you want some music on?" I'm like, "No, I want nothing. I want to be alone with my thoughts.
I want raging metal.
I want you guys to freeze me." Yeah.
All right, so Glaze, let me ask you the last question. If you can go back and give your younger self advice, it doesn't matter if it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would have told my younger self not to marry my first wife and, go make it on my own rather than marry her. I had a weak moment in my life where I married a really rich girl and then didn't do much with my life for a couple of years. And it was, I think when I was young and, I could have done a lot with my life and moved in a different direction. I mean, it all works out, but yeah.
It's funny, like your one choice will change the trajectory of your whole future.
I think it did. I mean, it ruined my whole 20s basically. And, when you're in your 20s, you're like, I was, smoking cigarettes with this chick and drinking and doing all this stuff. And I think back and I'm like, man, I was such a beast at 30. Once I stopped doing all that stuff, what would I have been if I had done it when I was 22 or 23 or 24, but, I mean, it made me a better person, but still it would have been nice not to have smoked all those cigarettes and, done all that stuff that was probably not so great for my body.
And you've upgraded.
Yes, I've upgraded. Oh, yeah, of course.
So I've got an applicant trying to move into one of my houses right now. I just accepted it, and he's a military war vet, married a girl, or he got engaged to a girl. She co-signed on the house. She never made a payment. She started decorating the house, never finished decorating it. He co-signed on her car for her. She never made another payment. So now his credit shot. His VA is covering all of his expenses, because she just decided she's just going to use him and abuse him. And then to kick him out of his house, she filed a protective order against him, and that got thrown out too. And I'm like, man, if you chased tail and that destroyed everything you worked for. So I'm trying to give. I think my wife's bleeding heart's rubbing off on me. I'm trying to give him a chance to better himself and fix his life. So I accepted his contract 2 days ago. So he's moving in. So
it's hard. You make dumb choices when you're young. I mean, it's my dad. My dad offered me $10,000 not to marry this girl, and I was like, "No, fuck that." And I think back, and I'm like, "Man, I should have taken that $10,000." So,
oh man, that's awesome. Sorry, Glaze. If guys want to get a hold of you, what's some of your social media presences? Because I know you got a bunch.
So Instagram, it's Am Glaze, and then TikTok, it's Glaze Runs. Nice. Those are the main ones.
Okay. So. All right, guys. Thank you for spending an hour and 2 minutes with us. We really appreciate it. I know you get to go do an ice bath now. So
yeah, exactly.
Reach out to him, guys. He's really cool to follow. He's really motivating to kind of follow his path of 100 to 250 miles at a clip. So Glaze, thanks for coming on. Buddy.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.